Good morning. Happy Easter. Welcome, friends. He is risen. Whether you are joining us in person or online, whether this is your first visit or you grew up here, we are so glad that you are here today. Welcome home. 5 weeks ago, we began with a simple invitation. You were invited to come into the conversations of Jesus. You were invited to bring your wilderness and your expectations, your questions, your thirst, and your blindness. And you have. You have shown up week after week and let Jesus speak into the places that you don't always let people see. I've had the honor of having some really beautiful and vulnerable conversations with some of you over the last few weeks. Some of you have named wilderness that you've been carrying quietly for years. Some of you admitted that your faith had more questions than answers, and that maybe that was okay. Some of you have recognized the wells that you've kept returning to, looking for something that never quite satisfies. And some of you have honestly asked whether the Jesus you've been following was the real one or a more convenient version that you've constructed along the way. These are not small things. These are conversations that change us, that transform us. And then came Holy Week. We experienced Good Friday together in the darkness and the cross and silence. And that brings us to this very morning, many centuries ago, Easter morning, when some women came to a tomb expecting an ending, but they never imagined they would have a conversation. Every conversation that we've heard over these last few weeks has ended the same way. Jesus saw the person in front of him. Jesus told them the truth, and Jesus offered hope. And Easter is not a different story. Easter is the same story told in full. So let's imagine the word of the Lord together from Matthew 28. It had been the longest weekend of their lives. 2 women, both named Mary, had watched Jesus die. They stood at the foot of the cross and saw it happen with their own eyes. They had watched the soldiers make sure. And when it was over, when the crowd had gone home, a man named Joseph stepped forward. Joseph was wealthy, respected, a member of the ruling council who had quietly become a disciple of Jesus. He hadn't been loud about it. But now, at the moment when everyone else was putting distance between themselves and the man on the cross, Joseph went to the governor, Pilate, and asked for the body. Pilate agreed, so Joseph took the body down, wrapped it carefully in clean linen cloth, and laid it in his own tomb, a brand new one cut straight from the rock. He rolled a heavy stone across the entrance, and he went away. But the 2 Marys, they stayed. They sat down across from the tomb and just stayed. Sitting there was the only thing that felt right, the last act of love available to them, just being present, just bearing witness to where he was. And eventually they went home too. The Sabbath was coming, and there was nothing left to do. But the next morning, Saturday, the religious leaders went to Pilate, the governor, with a concern. They remembered something Jesus had said while he was still alive. After 3 days, I will rise again. They didn't believe it, of course, but they were worried his followers might try to make it look like it happened. Steal the body, spread a rumor, start something. This last deception, they told Pilate, would be worse than the first. So Pilate gave them a guard detail and told them to make the tomb as secure as they knew how. So they went. They put an official seal on the stone. They posted soldiers at the entrance. They did everything in their power to make sure that that tomb stayed shut. The irony of that moment, the people who wanted Jesus dead were the ones remembering his promise to rise. The people who loved him seemed to have forgotten it or couldn't hold on to it through their own grief. And now there were armed guards standing watch over a sealed tomb, trying to prevent something that they didn't believe was possible, because no one was expecting what came next. Back to the two Marys. Sabbath came. They rested as the law required, but I don't think it was a rest that restored them. They were waiting for the day to be over so they could get back to the tomb. And then Sunday morning came. We don't know exactly what they said to each other as the Marys walked back. We don't know if they talked at all. Maybe they just walked, carrying their grief, carrying the spices they've prepared, carrying the sadness that comes when someone who you love is gone and you're just trying to do the last things that you can think to do. They were going to make sure that this really happens, that they didn't make this up. This was reality, right? They were not coming to see a miracle. They were coming to say goodbye. But something happened on the way to the tomb that they weren't prepared for. The ground shook. Not a tremor, but a violent earthquake. An angel came down from heaven and walked straight to the tomb. The angel rolled the stone away like it weighed nothing and sat on it. His face was like lightning. His clothes were white as fresh snow. The soldiers who had been posted to guard the tomb, trained men, armed men, looked at him once and collapsed. Matthew says they became like dead men. But the two women were still standing. The angel looked at them. He didn't tell them to calm down. He said, "Do not be afraid. I know what you're looking for." He knew why they came. He knew what these women were carrying, and he wanted them to know that they were seen. You are looking for Jesus, who was crucified. He is not here. He is risen just as he said. Just as he said. Jesus had told them this was going to happen. He had said it plainly more than once, but somehow in the middle of the grief and the fear and the weight of the cross, they had not been able to hold on to those words. Come and see the place where he lay. The tomb was empty, not robbed as the religious leaders feared. It was just empty. The place where the body should have been was just open, quiet. Now go quickly, said the angel. Tell his disciples, he has risen from the dead and he is going ahead of you. You will see him in Galilee. The women hurried. Matthew captures their state of mind in a beautiful sentence. He says the women left the tomb afraid yet filled with joy. Not one or the other, both at the same time. They were terrified and they were overflowing. They didn't fully understand what had just happened, but they knew it was real and they knew it was good. And their feet were moving before their minds could catch up with them. But before they could get to their destination, before they could get to the disciples, as they were still hurrying, Jesus met them on the road. He meets them in the middle of their running, in the middle of their fear and their joy, while they are still trying to figure out what to do with this news that they are carrying. And Jesus just says, greetings. The Marys fall at his feet. They hold on. How could this be? They worshiped him. And Jesus reaches down and grabs their hands. He pulls them up and says to them gently the same thing the angel had told them: do not be afraid. And he tells the women to tell his brothers to go to Galilee, that they will see him there. Now, while all of this was happening, something else is going on across town. The soldiers who had been guarding the tomb went to the religious leaders and told them everything. And the chief priests did what people in power often do when the truth is inconvenient. They paid to have it covered up. They told the guards, tell people the disciples stole the body while you were sleeping. You see, even the people who wanted Jesus to stay dead knew that the tomb was empty. No one argued that part. They just handed over a lot of money, made a few promises, and sent the soldiers off with a story that wouldn't hold together very well, but would have to do. But the truth required nothing but feet running down a road, running back to the 11 disciples, all of them eventually making their way to Galilee, to the mountain where Jesus had told them to meet him. And when they saw him, they worshiped him. But Matthew adds something that I find comforting. He says that some doubted. Not all of them, but some. And Jesus did not wait for the doubters to resolve their questions before he spoke. He walked toward all of them, the worshipers and the doubters together. And he said, all authority in heaven and on earth has been given to me. The risen Lord is announcing the cross did not defeat me. Death did not defeat me. Everything is now under my authority. Therefore, go. Go and make disciples of all nations. Baptize them. Teach them. Bring them into these same conversations you've been in. The honest ones, the disruptive ones, the ones that expose what you really trust and really thirst for and really believe. Bring more people into that story. And then he said the last thing, the thing that was meant to carry them through everything that was coming. I am with you always to the very end of the age. The women who followed Jesus didn't come to the tomb on Sunday morning expecting a conversation. They had been in the conversations we talked about during Lent. They had seen the healings, heard the teachings, watched him ride into Jerusalem while the crowd shouted, Hosanna. And then they watched him die. So this morning, they came with grief. They showed up faithfully when all hope was gone to tend to a corpse and to honor a death. They came to do the only thing left to do. They came to say goodbye. They came expecting an ending. So when they meet an angel, his words reframe every conversation that came before. The wilderness, not the end. The night, also not the end. The well, the mud on the eyes, the overturned tables, none of it was the end. Easter is the final word on the story. Because what Easter morning insists on, what it has always insisted on, what it will not stop insisting on, is that no matter how many times the world tries to bury it, we know this. Jesus does not stay in the tomb, and he does not wait for you to find him there. Matthew captures the emotional reality of the resurrection. They left the tomb with fear and great joy. This is what it looks like to honestly encounter Easter. We don't fully understand it. It disrupts our categories and it asks more of us than we planned to give. But it is real and it is really good. The risen Jesus doesn't wait at the destination for them. Jesus meets them in motion, In the middle of the fear and their joy and their running, he meets them on the road. He calls them and says to them, "Do not be afraid." And in the midst of their fear and their joy, in the midst of their worship and their doubting, in the midst of what they think they know and what they definitely do not understand, Jesus calls them to go anyways. There are no requirements about having it all figured out, which is good because they haven't seen a resurrected person before, and that is pretty difficult to explain. All that Jesus requires is for them to go. The conversations that they have been in, the words that Jesus said that they have stored in their hearts, the hope that they've now experienced, they go and they carry all of that with them. The resurrection doesn't just conclude the story, it transforms everything we thought we knew about failure and death and hope. Every conversation that we've walked through, every moment of exposure and uncomfortable question, everything that we name is all heading somewhere. And this is where it's heading. Not to a grave or an ending, but to an empty tomb. To Jesus meeting you on the road, looking you in the eye and saying, "I know what you are going through. Do not be afraid." Think back over these last few weeks. Think of the wilderness you've brought. Think of the confusion in the middle of the night, the thirst that you don't have names for. Think of the blindness that you didn't know was there until light started coming in. Those expectations you held about what God was supposed to do and how God was supposed to do it, expectations that quietly began to crack. None of that is brought here today to be managed. None of it is brought here to be minimized or wrapped up neatly or given a tidy resolution, and we don't have to be afraid of that. We don't have to be afraid of what we know or what we don't know. We don't have to be afraid of what the future holds or of what it means to see or of what to do with these holes that are left behind when our expectations and our thirst and our blindness are suddenly changing. All you have to do is show up. All you have to do is bring it to an empty tomb. Because the one who meets you there already loves you as you are. The one who meets you as you are on your way has already lovingly walked through the worst things death could do. Jesus has been to the bottom of every darkness. He has carried every failure, and he came back. So I invite you to wonder today, where in your life have you been living as if the tomb is still occupied, as if nothing has changed, as if death still has the final word? And what would actually be different this week in your home, in your relationships, in the way you see yourself, if you truly believed that he is risen? Because repentance is not the end of the story. Renewal is. And it turns out it was always going to end here. Whatever this season has uncovered in you, whatever came to the surface, whether through wilderness or darkness, in the well, in the return of sight, or even at the gates of a city cheering for the wrong reasons, you did not carry it with you today for nothing. You brought it to an empty tomb. And Jesus meets you on the road and looks you in the eye to say to you, "Do not be afraid. Go and tell, for I am with you always." This week, may you not be afraid when you find an empty tomb. May you meet Jesus where you are. And may you have the courage to go and tell the good news. He is risen. He is risen indeed.